Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Lauren O'Flaherty. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work with the At East team and the Midtown team. We're here to present today, Processing the 2020 Election.
And hi, everybody. My name is Dr. James Marinchak. I'm also a clinical psychologist for the At East team, also helping out a little bit with our Midtown clinic as well. So thank you for either being here or taking the time to watch this recording. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. So Lauren and I are presenting today in our official capacity as crossover mental health providers. Therefore, we're offering no political endorsements, and this presentation is meant to provide coping strategies for processing our feelings and reactions to the 2020 US election. And in no way do we seek to influence or offer any judgment on any person's experience or perspective. We also want to just give a little bit of context. These slides and this information were developed at the end of last week and beginning of this week prior to Tuesday, November 3rd, the election. But we are giving this presentation, we're recording on Wednesday, the 4th. As of right now, obviously, the results are still inconclusive. So we hope that you can use this information for whatever you might be feeling or whatever developments come over the next few days or weeks. We sort of meant it that way to range the gamut of whatever reactions or feelings you're having, regardless of the results. So hopefully you'll find it helpful no matter where we are. I'd like to start out at the beginning with a relaxation exercise called progressive muscle relaxation. All of us have been carrying a heavy burden of stress and tension over the past several months. There was a recent survey by the American Psychological Association that found high levels of stress related to the 2020 election. And interestingly, this cut across party affiliation. So you can see 76% of Democrats, similar number of Republicans and independents. It's also likely that even now, the day after the election, that this stress, this anxiety, this tension is going to continue. So it's really important for us to develop strategies, both in the here and now and in the coming weeks, to give our minds and bodies a break. We also, even though we don't know the results yet, want to signify the culmination of the election, and now this process going forward to try to certify the results and see the direction that our country together is going to be going in. So we're going to use this exercise called progressive muscle relaxation to do that. Progressive muscle relaxation is an exercise that reduces stress and anxiety in your body by having you slowly tense and then relax each muscle. This exercise can provide an immediate feeling of relaxation, and it's best to practice frequently. During this exercise, each muscle should be tensed, but not to the point of strain. If you have any injuries or pain, you can skip the affected areas of your body. Try to pay special attention to the feeling of releasing tension in each muscle and the resulting feeling of relaxation. Let's begin. Sit back or lie down in a comfortable position. Shut your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. Begin by taking a deep breath and notice the feeling of air filling your lungs. Hold your breath for a few seconds. Release the breath slowly and let the tension leave your body. Take in another deep breath and hold it. Again, slowly release the air. Even slower now. Take another breath. Fill your lungs and hold the air. Slowly release the breath and imagine the feeling of tension leaving your body. Now move your attention to your feet. Begin to tense your feet by curling your toes inward and the arch of your foot. Hold on to the tension and notice what it feels like. Release the tension in your foot. Notice the new feeling of relaxation. Next, begin to focus on your lower leg, Tense the muscles in your calves. Hold them tightly and pay attention to the feeling of tension. Release the tension from your lower legs. Again, notice the feeling of relaxation. Remember to continue taking deep breaths. Next, tense the muscles of your upper leg and pelvis. You can do this by tightly squeezing your thighs together. Make sure you feel tenseness without going to the point of strain. And release. Feel the tension leaving your muscles. Begin to tense your stomach and chest. You can do this by sucking your stomach in. Squeeze harder and hold the tension a little bit longer. Release the tension. Allow your body to go limp. Let yourself notice this feeling of relaxation. Continue taking deep breaths. Breathe in slowly and notice the air fill your lungs while you hold it. Release the air slowly. Feel it leaving your lungs. Now, tense the muscles in your back by bringing your shoulders together behind you. Hold them tightly. Tense them as hard as you can without straining, and keep holding. Release the tension from your back. Feel the tension slowly leaving your body and the new feeling of relaxation. Notice how different your body feels when you allow it to relax. Tense your arms all the way from your hands to your shoulders. Make a fist and squeeze all the way up your arm and hold it. Release the tension from your arms and shoulders. Notice the feeling of relaxation in your fingers, hands, arms, and shoulders. Notice how your arms feel limp and at ease. Move up to your neck and your head. Tense your face and your neck by distorting the muscles around your eyes and mouth. Release the tension. Again, notice the new feeling of relaxation. Finally, tense your entire body. Tense your feet, legs, stomach, chest, arms, head, and neck. Tense harder without straining. Hold the tension. Now release. Allow your whole body to go limp. Pay attention to the feeling of relaxation and how different it is from the feeling of tension. Now, when you're ready, begin to wake your body up by slowly moving your muscles. Adjust your arms and legs. Stretch your muscles and open your eyes when you're ready. All right. Thank you all. Hopefully that was a helpful exercise and you're feeling a little bit looser, a little bit less tense. Again, one of the things that we like about progressive muscle relaxation is you can use it anywhere, anytime. You can use it for one muscle group that you might be carrying tension in. You could use it for all the muscle groups. And it really helps put you in tune with your own body and your own emotional state as well. So if you know, hey, I'm carrying a lot of tension or I'm just feeling like I'm kind of spiraling or burned out, you can use this, either in that moment or give yourself a little bit of time and space and separation to do the longer exercise that we just did. So thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. So focusing on if right now or in the next coming days, the results are going to lead you to feel positive or to celebrate. So we want to think about how you can both hold those feelings, but maybe also some ways to both accentuate them for yourselves and connect with others who might not be feeling that way by these results. So if the results of the election end up engendering positive emotions for you, try staying with this. What we mean by this is to practice being mindfully aware and noticing of your present moment without just trying to move on to the next thing or the next worry. It's really important for us to do this to be a counterbalance to what we call our negative filters. And what that means is we're way more likely to focus and pay attention to the negative, that when we have the positive, it's there and that we're happy, but we so quickly move on to the next thing. One example of an exercise where this is practiced is if you take a food that you really like, and instead of just chewing it a couple times and swallowing it, the practice is to let it sort of sit in your mouth and to really experience and accentuate the sensation of taste and smell of it. So they'll talk about, instead of chewing 3 times and swallowing, let it sit there for a couple seconds and try to notice the texture, the smell, the taste, how it changes as you savor it and allow yourself to really experience that moment. If you're feeling good, if you're happy about what happened, try to give yourself moments where you can take a pause and just take in that good feeling, even if there's still uncertainty about, where we as a country go from here or what our government is going to look like. Allow yourself to hold those positive feelings. We also want to try to avoid gloating or any communications to others, based on spite. There's obviously a temptation because we've been so polarized that if you have people in your life who wanted a different result or maybe were expressing negativity to you beforehand to, want to kind of spike the ball or celebrate. This doesn't ultimately enhance your positivity. It makes them feel worse, but most importantly, it only furthers division and this us versus them, tribalistic polarization that has been affecting so many of us in our country. And also, it makes it harder for us to unite against problems still facing our country that aren't going away after the election. We have here COVID and the economy, obviously, most importantly. We need to be united in that, even regardless of our political differences. And the election is not going to solve that no matter who wins. So try to think about what are ways in which you can engage with somebody who may even have a different reaction than you. Lauren's going to talk about this a little bit later in navigating relationships, but just some thoughts. Remember that if you are reaching out to them and you're offering, empathy or sympathy, that doesn't mean that you're agreeing with their politics or you're agreeing with their values. Also, when you do this, try doing it in a way that directly allows you to see or hear the other person, like a phone call or a virtual meeting or a Zoom meeting. Don't just do it by email or text, because again, you lose so much of the other person if you do it that way, and it's a lot easier to fall into condescension or sarcasm or misinterpretation of what you or the other person is saying. And do not seek to persuade them, change their mind, judge their positions. They are not going to be in a place to want that right now, and it's only going to further defensiveness for them and for you. Rather, try to join and understand what they're feeling and see if there's any points of commonalities that you can share moving forward from Tuesday's election. If you're having the opposite reaction, either today, where the results are still uncertain, or once the results are clarified, you need to understand how we can tolerate and accept those feelings of distress and upset. What this means is, how do we help ourselves by effectively soothing? It's important to avoid things that give us a short-term gain but a long-term pain in our coping strategies. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but I have here alcohol. Obviously people might right now feel a need to relieve pressure or tension or cope with these feelings by something that takes it away in the immediate moment, a distraction or even like a numbing. Alcohol can commonly, be one of these things, along with many others. The problem with these, though, is that while they can be helpful in the short term, they only exacerbate both the problems and the feelings that you're having in the long run. And they make it even more harder for you to feel that you can effectively handle those feelings or cope with them on your own. So think about, are there other ways that will allow you to feel better, but not have those long-term consequences, either physically, or emotionally? We'll come up with a couple examples of these later that Lauren will talk about, but try to be thinking about what actually is helpful for me, not just in the here and now, but in the long run. You also want to be careful to decatastrophize. When we're upset, we think about the worst case scenarios. It's all over. Our country is doomed. How could this happen? Where are we going from here? It makes sense to feel that way when we're upset, when we're scared, and we also don't know what's coming forward. But we have to be careful to not just allow those thoughts to automatically be there and believe them to be true without any kind of counterbalance or sense of, well, what could we do or what are we going to do, even if for us it feels like the worst is happening. One thing you can remind yourself of is that you're not alone in these feelings. Ask yourself, what resources or supports do you have? What ways can you continue to advocate even after the election for the values that you and so many others believe in? And even if the worst case happens, or even if it's not what you want, how can you cope? How can you survive? How can you keep moving forward? Think about past times in your life, don't have to be related to politics or elections, where something really negative happened or something didn't go the way that you wanted. How did you handle it in the moment? How did you recover afterwards? That will help remind you that we are all capable of resiliency, and you can find these ways for yourself, even now, these resources to move forward. One other thought, in seeking validation for how you're feeling, be mindful. Is reading this or having this discussion helpful for me? Even if I'm reading something or I'm talking to somebody that shares how I'm feeling right now and makes me feel connected in that, is it ultimately making me feel better? Or is it only making me feel worse or angrier or more fearful about what's going on? So ask yourself that in those moments when you're taking in that information or you're having those conversations. Also, I think this is very important. We want to practice something called radical acceptance. And Lauren's going to talk about this in our next slide. We wanted to give you a quote here from Dr. Marsha Linehan, who's the developer of a therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, that really preaches and practices this concept. We can't always get what we want, and it's not a catastrophe.
All right, thanks so much, James. So moving forward with radical acceptance. So this is a concept that really illustrates that acceptance in our lives can decrease our suffering. So essentially, during difficult times, we as humans experience pain and suffering. It's something we can't avoid. But if we can't accept the situation that's causing us pain, we're going to remain stuck and we're going to suffer as a result. So many of us are struggling because we feel powerless right now in the face of the current political climate. No matter what side you may be on or what political beliefs you may hold, it's clear there's a lot of discord, there's a lot of uncertainty in our country, and this causes us pain. But the good news is we don't have to suffer. We can reduce this suffering by being willing to accept it and relate to it rather than to fight with it. And stopping this fight allows us to use our energy in a more positive way to move forward and to choose what we call values-based actions, which I'll get into a little bit later. So radical acceptance dictates that when you find yourself in a painful situation, you have 4 choices. The first being you can change the situation. So is there any action you can take here? Is the situation changeable, solvable? Obviously we can't control or change the results of an election after the fact, but there are things that we can do, like becoming more involved in causes that we believe in. And it's important to be realistic about our power to make change in a situation. And a question that you can ask yourself here is, what would you be willing to do to end your suffering? The second choice we have is to change how we see or think about the situation at hand. So our minds are super, super powerful, and our thoughts can either help or hurt us. So here, you want to look and see if you can find any meaning in the situation. Is there a way that we can use this situation to spur learning? Is this something that we can use to teach strength or build resilience? And it absolutely helps to see what positives can come out of a challenging and painful time, instead of, throwing our hands in the air and saying, like, we can't do anything, we give up. We're able to say, all right, so there's going to be some positives that come out of it. There's going to be some learning that comes out of it. And this can potentially impact our lives in a hopeful way. And then the third choice that we're faced with here is stay stuck. If we stay stuck, we continue to suffer. We continue to hold on to these negative thoughts and those resulting feelings. And, it's really important here to note that I use the word choose, when you ask yourself this question, am I choosing to stay stuck because it's doing something for me? So staying stuck is a choice, even though sometimes it doesn't feel that way, right? We've all made this choice at some point. You can think back to maybe a breakup where you couldn't let go of the hurt or the anger, or maybe a job that you were trying to get and you interviewed for, and then, you were denied. Sometimes we refuse to accept what is reality because we don't want to. Essentially, we refuse. We're like, no, I don't want to believe that. But there's a really powerful metaphor here about a tug of war with the situation we're in. So we can continue to fight and pull on this rope, but the more we pull, the more the suffering sucks us back in and pulls back, giving us this unending game of tug of war, like you see these adorable puppies engaged in here. So the only way out of this is, you guessed it, to drop this rope and to not play that game anymore. Another really powerful visual that I like is to picture yourself falling into quicksand. All of those classic 80s movies that, someone was always falling in quicksand. And the more that you struggle, the deeper that you sink into the quicksand. That is also staying stuck, which brings us here to the final choice, acceptance. So radical acceptance, it's a difficult concept, right? It's something that, it's hard to see how accepting something, that you don't want can be helpful for you. So what if my candidate doesn't win? What if our country continues to experience unrest? What if the political parties never agree on an issue about which I'm truly passionate? Yes, all of these things could be true. And yes, you could choose to accept the situation exactly as it is, instead of spending your valuable time, energy, attention, etc., on being upset and angry and fighting with it. So essentially, if these things happen, we are obviously allowed to feel upset. We're allowed to feel the emotions that we feel. But then we want to move forward and we want to choose to say, okay, I accept this as reality. And what can I do from here, right? I'm going to accept this. I'm going to move into the next stage of taking this control back and making what we call values-based choices or actions that are really, deciding what your priorities are in life and making choices based on that, not letting this reality hold you back from doing something that is empowering for you. So asking yourself here, do I want to take my power back?
So I think Lauren just gave a really great explanation and some examples of how we can use radical acceptance and focus on our own, values-based actions for things that have already happened, and we can think about that as like, the election that just took place, but we can also think about how we can use those things for what we don't know or what could be going forward. And this again sort of relates to this concept of tolerating distress by embracing and accepting uncertainty. The results of our election, even if we don't know what they are right now or might not know for a while, are still going to create a lot of uncertainty in the long term. What happens now? Where do we go from here? Even after the results are, again, certified, there's this whole period of transition. There's the winter we're going into, with the pandemic. It's natural that we're going to feel a lot of anxiety, worry, and anger because of that lack of certainty and that lack of predictability. We like predictability. We like to know. It's comfortable. It makes us feel like we're in control. And likewise, when we don't have that predictability, we feel out of control. We feel overwhelmed. We fall into those worst case scenarios, that catastrophic thinking. And it's important for us to not try to fight against uncertainty, to radically accept it, because the more you try to fight against it, the more you try to get that control, the more you try to take power back against something that you don't have power of, the further and further you're going to sink into that quicksand that Lauren talked about before. So again, we want to normalize uncertainty. We also want to put faith in our resilience and ability to cope and figure things out as we go along and as we get more information in the future. One way you can practice this is by being mindful of the coping thoughts or the kind of thoughts that you're telling yourself when you're feeling worried or when you're feeling anxious about things that we don't know right now. I have an example of something here and I can highlight it. I don't know where our country goes from here, but that's okay. I can take this one day at a time and I can focus on what I need to help me with each day. The two phrases of that sentence that I have bolded, I don't know. It's allowing yourself to say that it's okay to not know, not I need to know or I need to figure this out. We have to certify the results today. It's allowing yourself to say, I don't know, and that's okay. The other focus is each day, here and now, rather than what comes tomorrow or the next week or the next month, the next 4 years. We need to right now, especially where there is this uncertainty, focus on what do I need to help me get through today. And if that's something that we don't have that information to know, what the results are or what it's going to mean for our country, that's obviously going to be stressful and anxiety provoking. So instead of trying to figure out those things tomorrow, what can you figure out for yourself today? What do I need to help me get through today while I accept the idea of it's okay to not know and not have those answers right now? And that again relates to those values-based actions. What can I do for myself today or for those around me that are in line with what I know, what I feel, what I care about? Avoid seeking reassurance, obsessively checking, reviewing, or any other behaviors that seek to, in the here and now, resolve that uncertainty. It's only going to bring you back to where you started, and it's only going to lead to more worry because these are not problems that we can solve or know right now. We have enough evidence and data to know now that when we're worried and we get into these kind of behaviors or processes, it only furthers and accentuates the worry for us, makes us feel further and further into that quicksand. So try to break free of those behaviors and focus on something that leads to a different path, allowing you to accept where we are right now.
Okay, so I am going to give you some more, practical tips to tolerate distress. This is a really difficult thing. Like James said, what can I do today, right now, today, to make myself feel better? That doesn't involve me getting deeper into that quicksand, right? And so I like to think of the acronym ACCEPTS. So I suggest that everybody write down your own list of potential activities that feel good for you and have those close at hand. So I tell, my patients to write everything down on their phone, keep it in your notes section, or have a little notebook, write down a list of things that you can use that are personal to you that make you feel better. Okay. So the acronym ACCEPT stands for activities. So we can engage physically, we can engage mentally. So ideas include going for a walk, reading a book, taking an online yoga class, putting a puzzle together, lifting some weights, playing a game with your partner or with your child, getting down on the floor and just like becoming engaged in an activity. That is a really, really great way to take your mind off of something that is stressful and uncertain. C is for contribute. So thinking of ways you can give back, which, James talked about a little bit earlier, especially during this time, there are ways to help out, which in turn helps us feel more connected to others, less alone, more empathetic towards others. So, think back to the last time you bought something for someone, bought them a coffee, when you were going out for an errand and brought that back for them, help someone carry their groceries to their car. Didn't that engender positive feelings for you? And so that's something that we can do that connects us with others, but also gives us positive feelings too. Comparisons is the next one. So let's be clear here. We're comparing our current self to our past self, not us to someone else. So what I want you to do here is to think about times in the past when you had stressful situations in your life. I'm sure we have all gone through stressful things previously. And guess what? We've all survived. We're here today. And so really reminding yourself that you do have resilience, you do have the capacity to persevere through the struggles in life. And so you will persevere through this struggle as well. Emotions. So create an opposite emotion. When we are feeling anxious and worried and afraid and fearful and sad or angry or upset, we want to do something that can help us create the opposite emotion. So watching a funny movie or listening to uplifting music, going to a boxing class or doing like a really hard workout. Any of these things can help us switch our emotions from these negative spaces to a more positive space. And the next one is push away, or I like to call it compartmentalize. So this is a short-term strategy that we want to use. It's not a forever thing. This is something that you can use in the moment so that you don't have to deal with the negative feelings if you feel like it's too much. We've all felt that way, right? So think back to the last time you had to set aside a personal problem in order to go to work, or set aside a work problem in order to come home to be there for your partner or for your children. The idea here is that we are going to wrap this up in a neat little package, and we are going to put it on the shelf, and we're going to say, okay, I'm not going to deal with this right now. It'll be there tomorrow when I feel more up to dealing with it, when I've gotten better sleep, or when I feel more rested. So that is something that you can use to kind of put that away and compartmentalize it. So next is thoughts. Mindful focus on something like a breathing exercise. So my favorite breathing exercise that's super simple is 7 counts in and 11 counts out. And it's easy to remember because it's 7-11. But that will switch you from the fight or flight mode into the rest and digest mode. And if you do that for, at least a minute, that'll automatically kind of give you that peace of mind, that relaxation. And that is a very mindful activity. We can also do something like counting from, backward from 100. Like if you're really angry or upset, trying to focus on counting backward from 100 is going to really help your mind to shift. You can also rationally talk yourself down from this emotional place. Really challenge your negative thoughts and say, is that really accurate? Is that really true? And then it can also be helpful to have compassion for yourself in this moment, to think about being on your own side. And then the last one here is sensations. So this could include, splashing your face with cold water, or taking a hot shower, making a cup of tea and holding that warm cup in your hand, having like a fuzzy blanket or a pillow, something like that. So what we want to do is engage our senses. Sometimes people like to use essential oils or candles, etc. I have my lavender oil next to my desk here, and it's really helpful with relaxation. So that's another thing that you can do to kind of shift that distress. All right, speaking of shifting, so we'll shift gears here and move on to the next topic. This is navigating relationships. So James talked a little bit earlier about, how hard it can be during this time to, if your candidate wins, to not gloat, or if your candidate loses, to not be frustrated and angry and take it out on your loved ones, right? And we all have, challenging situations, especially, I'm thinking forward to the holidays coming up. Whether or not we're spending the holidays with loved ones in the same way due to COVID, we'll still probably be more social, even if it's over Zoom or even if it's distanced, outside somewhere, right? We will probably be interacting with other people who are in our lives. And, so really remembering that blanket generalizations are not helpful. They're also not accurate, right? Saying all of, this particular political party is bad, or all of these people are wrong. It's just not accurate. It's just not helpful. We are going to have differing opinions because we're humans, and that's kind of the beauty of it, right? We all have our own perspectives on life. At the core, we just desire to be heard. We desire to be respected and understood, regardless of political affiliation. And I think thinking about conflict as an opportunity or, something you can use for change or for growth is a nice way to frame it, instead of like, oh my God, there's this horrible thing, right? Seeing it as a way to learn more about someone, or seeing it as a way to facilitate you helping them learn something, right? And then also, we're going to touch on boundaries, because boundaries are going to be something really, really important in order to keep ourselves safe and keep ourselves, getting along with others. Okay. So you can ask yourself, if you're finding yourself in a conflict or in an interaction with someone, who do I want to be? So really behaving in a way that you can feel proud, holding yourself up to high standards. You want to be the kind of person that engages in, kind, positive behaviors, kind, positive, connective words, right? We don't want to be the kind of person that is behaving in the opposite way. And so really considering that, who do I want to be in this interaction? And then also, what are my goals? So what are my goals in this particular interaction? And what are my goals overall? Mutual respect. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with the other person. We don't often agree with people, and yet we can still have a respectful interaction with them. And I also think empathy is a really important point here. A lot of times, if we can develop empathy for the other party's position and their context, or where they might be coming from, we can gain an understanding of why they believe what they do, why they think what they do, why they behave the way that they do. We can then let go of those negative emotions and instead, have a little more understanding and empathy for them. And I think another important thing to consider here, thinking about the consequences of our actions in any interaction that we have with someone, the future of our relationship with them, our reputation potentially at work or in the community. Considering, is this a long-lasting relationship? Is this a family member? Is this my partner? Is this my mother-in-law? Is this someone that I'm going to have in my life and want to have in my life? Or is this someone that, is maybe a brief interaction at the grocery store? That might change the way that you frame things, but still keeping in mind your goals for, do I want to communicate with this person? Do I want to understand this person here? So this moves us into also boundary setting. So setting boundaries with people when we are in conflict is really key. And also having assertive communication. So being able to speak our mind in a way that is calm and in a way that is productive. So I think it's really important to have a plan before going into any interaction. Like, let's say, you are attending a Thanksgiving get together and that a particular family member is going to be attending and they have differing political views. I mean, we've all been there. Having a plan for that interaction so that you can navigate it a little more comfortably. And also, choosing to walk away if you can't engage calmly or productively, or if the other party is unable or unwilling to do so. That's all part of that boundary setting, is allowing only what you want to allow, right? So I've got a couple examples here, which I think could be really helpful to go into. We're going to practice speaking in a calm and assertive manner. So let's say, someone brings up a topic that could be problematic, and you really just don't want to talk about it. You prefer not to. So you could say something like, hey, I'd really prefer if we didn't discuss politics. Hey, why don't you tell me about your new project at work? Kind of deflecting, I think, helps to ease that potentially, awkward interaction, right? It can get awkward when we tell people we don't want to talk about what they're trying to talk about. Also, you could say something like, hey, I'd like to understand more about your point of view. Can you explain how you decided to support this candidate? Coming at an interaction from a place of curiosity will help you to, encourage the person to speak to you honestly and openly. You can also say something like, all right, thank you for sharing with me. And, may I share with you the reasons I'm passionate about this particular topic or this particular candidate? I think facilitating more open communication can be a way that we can foster that connectedness and not further the isolation. And, as James talks about earlier, we're all in this together. We want to work at the grassroots level to foster those kinds of relationships in our lives. All right. So these are challenging times. We want to allow the adversity that we are currently experiencing as a country, as individuals, as families, as communities to fuel growth. And we also want to practice compassion for ourselves and for others. And I'm going to end with this quote, which I think is really beautiful. Times are difficult globally. Awakening is no longer a luxury or an ideal. It's becoming critical. We don't need to add more depression, more discouragement, or more anger to what's already here. It's becoming essential that we learn how to relate sanely with difficult times. The earth seems to be beseeching us to connect with joy and discover our innermost essence. This is the best way we can benefit others and ourselves.
Thank you, Lauren, for that really beautiful quote, and I think all that helpful information and those skills. We also both want to thank you for taking the time, if you're watching this on recording, and hope that this has been helpful for you. Again, we're offering this information and these skills in the hope that whatever you're feeling, whether that's in one moment one way or another moment another way, that could be changing a lot, especially right now when we still have a lot of this uncertainty and ambiguity around the election, that you can use these skills flexibly where you feel like you need. For our crossover friends and colleagues, some of this information has been put onto the Mental Health Wiki page. You can see it, the pathway is the Mental Health Wiki, Clinical Resources, Election 2020. They're down on PDF files, and you can sort of use or pick each sheet as you feel like that you need. So, you want to use that for yourself, or anybody else in your life that you think could benefit or be helped by this information right now. Again, we're all in this together, so we really want to make sure we all have what we need from each other right now. So thank you all very much, and we hope you're well. Take care.
Thank you.